Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. I am very, very pleased that you are all here with me today for our very last show of 2024. I cannot believe we're already at that time of year. As my loyal, regular listeners know, we always take off the last 2 weeks of the year. So after this, no new shows until January. But if you hit our live stream, if you go to talkradio.nyc and plus press play on the little live stream player, you'll probably hear some reruns, some old episodes that are just as juicy and good. All right, so let's start off as we usually do with my blog post. And this is a really good one. Actually, this one, and it really ties into my topic in some ways. I really like this blog post, and I'm really glad this is the one that we're going to end the year on. And the title for this one is All We Have is This Present Moment. Life can be hard. We may experience pain and suffering that can cause us not to want to be here, to run away from the agony. We may want to hide from our life or our past and just find a way to stop the pain. It can be too much for us at times. Often, we just don't have good ways to cope with the pain. So it takes us away from the present moment because we just don't want to feel it anymore. All we want is to have some relief and feel better. We use all kinds of things to take us away from the pain. Drugs, sex, food, alcohol, even our phones. All these distractions take us out of the present moment. They take us away, however briefly, from what we are feeling. While this coping mechanism is necessary, it also hurts us. For we get so used to not being in the present moment that we learn to almost never be here now. The shame of it is we only have the present moment. This moment, right here, right now, is all we truly have. All of life is lived in the present, for the past is gone and the future hasn't happened yet. Yet we either get stuck avoiding our feelings for what happened in the past, or we escape into a future that never comes. As conscious beings with choice, we can make a different decision. We can learn to deal with the pain and the sorrow from our past and then let it go. Freedom comes when we go through that pain into the wholeness that awaits on the other side for us. It's not easy. That is certain. The path through the pain is for the truly heroic at heart. For some of us never get there, and we miss out on so much when all we do is find another way to take us out of the pain and out of presence. There is no easy answer. The solution is challenging, but the reward is the greatest prize of all, having our life back, being able to live in the present moment once again. This present moment, and only this present moment, is all we ever have. Even being present to the pain and anguish is better than being checked out altogether. For the sensation of pain is not the hardest part. It is all the stories we create around the pain, how we tell ourselves that it will go on forever, or how it means there is something wrong with us. If we can stop judging the pain as something bad, even for a moment, it makes being present to it so much easier. And then perhaps we can take a moment to see the pain for what the pain is trying to teach us. If we can come to that place, then we can learn to live in all our present moments. Is there something in your life that you are not being present to? Can you find a way to be present to it, even though it can be painful? So I believe I wrote this blog post a couple of years ago when I started working with a client who would come to our ceremonies, and pretty much her whole experience was just being in pain the whole time. And throughout the whole session, you can hear her crying and, just making noise, barely conscious in some ways. And if she did say something, often it was, I don't want to be here. Why am I here? Why is why is this happening to me? Because there was so much trauma from such a young age. It was almost, you could tell the trauma must have come from before the time she was even able to speak. And just observing and seeing her go through her process, it made me really reflect on presence and not being present, and how brave she was for facing her pain and being present to it. We also want to be careful not to wallow in our pain, not to marinate in it. But yeah, whether it's sadness, anguish, grief, loss, whatever your pain is, fear, whatever your pain is, if we're not present to it, we miss out not just on that, but we miss out on our whole life. Because the thing they never teach us in school, the thing our parents never taught us, is that we can't just not be present to part of our life. Because not being present is a habit. It is a skill we acquire. But when it becomes so ingrained, then we keep missing out and keep missing out and keep missing out until there's no more life left. So I know for a lot of my clients, they look at me when I'm like I'm crazy when I say we've got to be present to the pain. But the present moment is all we have. And if that's where we are, then that's where we are. And the one thing, the one ray of hope, the one lifeline that we can hold on to in the midst of all that pain is that the more able we are to experience that pain, the more able we are to hold it, to feel the sadness, the sorrow, the fear, the anguish, the terror, the loss, the more we're able to hold it, then the more joy we can feel, the more happiness we can feel, the more passion, the more excitement, the more we can just feel, period. And the reason why this is such an important thing to talk about is because, especially in today's society, where our phones, our computers, our screens take us out of presence all the time, all the time. Hey, I'm as guilty as the next person. I'm on my phone at times when I shouldn't be on my phone. I'm not present at times when I should be present. And look, nobody except maybe, these Buddhist monks who've been meditating for 50, 60 years, nobody's present all the time. It's not what I'm saying. The point of this blog is to not shy away from the pain, not to push it down and suppress it with alcohol or other drugs or video games or phones or whatever it is. Because the more we suppress that energy, the more we stuff it down and we ignore it, the stronger and stronger it's going to come back. And if we can continue to ignore it and not feel it, not face it, it'll eventually come back as a physical disease or physical problem. I've always been a big believer in everything is energy first until that energy gets so dense that then it manifests down into a physical form. So if it's not yet manifested to a physical problem, great. Then let's work with that energy. Let's process and feel that energy and find our way through so that then we can really be present to the rest of our lives. That we can be present for the joy of a spring day, of a walk on the beach or in the park, or be present to being in the company of good friends. Be present to whatever is happening in the moment. And the surest way I know to just make it a little bit easier to be present to the pain is to just feel it without any judgment, to just be present to whatever your pain is. Like I said, the fear, the anxiety, the depression, the worry, the loss, the grief, to just be present to it and not make a story around it and not make how you're an awful person because you're feeling this and not tell yourself the story that, oh, life is punishing me, God is punishing me because you're feeling this. It's not a punishment. It's just what we feel. And our feelings are wonderful things. There's so much information in our feelings. And the whole reason why we feel pain is so that we know we need to make a change, to know that something doesn't feel right for us. Sometimes, most of the time, our pain is inflicted on us from other people. But the fact that they inflict pain on us is not nearly as detrimental as the stories we make about that pain that's been inflicted upon us. the stories we make about that person who inflicted the pain, and more importantly, the stories we make about ourselves for having the pain inflicted on us. So, with this blog post, with this last show of the year, I implore anyone listening to this, no matter when you're listening to us, whether you're watching the video on YouTube or listening to the podcast on Apple or Spotify, wherever you happen to come across this message, if you're hearing this message is for you. Don't run away from the feelings. Be present to them so you can be present to your life. So that one day, when you're much, much older, you don't look back and say, oh, I wish I had done this or that. I wish I had been more present to my friends, my family, my loved ones. And just know because I've been there, that the other side of feeling that pain, the other side of feeling all those uncomfortable feelings, there are wonderful, joyful feelings waiting for you. You may not be able to access them right now. You may not be able to feel them right now. But if you do the deep work, if you can find somehow, some way to be present and hold that pain and give it some space to breathe without making any story around it, that eventually it has to dissipate. It has to be processed. And maybe it'll never leave, but maybe we can integrate it into ourselves, into our lives, and know that it's there and it's a part of us. And it's something we can carry with us, but not as a burden, as a lesson. And if we can be present to that, we can be present to anything. And when we're really present, oof, what a life we can live. So that's my blog post. It's entitled, All We Have Is This Present Moment. You can always find my blog at talkradio.nyc and on my personally branded website of theconsciousconsultant.com. And we'll be right back and we'll dive into our main topic of the show, which is the importance of making time for ourselves. And we'll talk about that when we come back. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We do this every week to be of service to you, my loyal listeners. And we will be right back in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, this special episode, our end of the year episode, where it's just me and you. And I'm going to dive into our main topic now, which is the importance of making time for ourselves. You know, it was really quite interesting how during the pandemic, for the first time in my lifetime, we were kind of forced into spending time with ourselves. And it was quite curious people's reaction to it. For some people, they loved having that time to themselves. But for most people, they didn't feel so good about it. They were so used to being around other people, so used to being distracted and running from here to there and back. So having this much space and this much time to be with ourselves was pretty uncomfortable for most people. And it's uncomfortable for a number of different reasons. Yet if we're mindful about it, if we can understand the real beauty and value of spending time with ourselves, even if it's uncomfortable in the beginning, we'll learn that it's one of the biggest gifts we can give to ourselves. So why is making time for ourselves so important? Well, if you ask anybody who has a ton of responsibilities, who has parents, kids, who's constantly being pulled in a million different directions, what is the one thing they often say? I just need some time for myself. As much as we are social creatures, as much as we're designed to run in packs and to be with others, we also need time to be by ourselves. There's a balance where we don't want to be completely by ourselves, but we don't want to be spending all our time with other people. Because, and here's bringing it back to my blog post, when we're constantly with other people, that can take us out of presence to what we're feeling. Suddenly, our attention, instead of being inward and what's going on within us, it's outward and it's what's going on with, the other people I'm with. But you see, when there's an imbalance, when too much of our time is spent focused on being with other people, then how do we truly know how we feel in any given moment? How do we know what we need? How do we give ourselves the time to process whatever we've been going through in the moment? Not so easy. Not so easy at all. So it was really funny because a friend of mine recently went on a Vipassana meditation retreat. And Vipassana meditation, it's where basically you spend a whole week in silence. Now, you're not completely alone because there's a whole bunch of other people around there in silence as well, but you're just not talking. So when we're not talking, when we're not expressing ourselves, we can be even more present to what's going on within us. Now, not everybody can take off 9 days from what they're doing and go to one of these Vipassana retreat centers and be there with themselves the whole time. But we don't have to. See, that's a big concentrated commitment. But then what happens when we come back? What happens in our day-to-day life? My loyal listeners know, like, I'm not so much into like doing the big thing and making some big splash. I like the little baby steps. I like the little things that we can do. So there are lots of ways, and we're going to talk about them throughout the show today. There are lots of ways to give ourselves time. Somebody once described human beings to me as being these giant antennas that receive and transmit energy all day long. And if you think about it, when we're with other people, there's a different energy. Our focus is different. Our attention is different. Our presence is different. But what we don't realize is we're actually picking up energy from the other people. The Heart Math Institute has measured the electromagnetic field that the heart generates, and it's something like 6 feet. I mean, it's huge. So when we're around other people, we're in their energetic field. They're in our energetic field. And if you're very sensitive, sometimes you pick up someone else's energy. And when we're running around all day long, going from one place to another, if you're one of those people who now has to go into an office, or if you drive a cab for a living, or if you're just, because of the nature of your business, you're just always running around outside. It's like we're always putting out this energy, putting out this energy, putting out this energy, and we're draining our battery. And we don't give ourselves time to recharge. We don't give ourselves time to feel what's going on with us until we stop, until we're not with other people, until we take a break from the frenetic nature of life. It's kind of funny. In the old days, there was plenty of time outside of work, within work, to talk with your coworkers, to socialize, to be quiet, to be in your own thoughts. And these days, everything is so much about making profit and being productive, and you got to do this and you got to do that. And if it's not about that, it's you got to take your kids to every activity they have, or you have to attend all these functions and everything. There's so much to do now that the idea of just sitting still and doing nothing is like unthinkable in today's world. Yet it is absolutely one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves. So I hope you're sitting down and taking some time while you're listening to the show, whether you're listening to the podcast or watching the video. And let's just spend a little time with ourselves. So we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we'll talk about what are the different ways we can spend time with ourselves. And why is it so important? Touched upon a little bit. We'll go a little bit more in depth. So everybody, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. Thank you for joining me for my special end of year show, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
So we're talking this last episode of the year, about the importance of making time for ourselves. And I kind of talked last segment about the challenges, about why it's hard to do it. But let's talk a little bit about why you should do it, the benefits behind it. So I touched upon it a little bit, but there's even more benefits. So one of the things to look at is like, what practice is a kind of practice that you always do on your own, making time for yourself. Look at people who meditate. And I'm not saying you have to meditate to spend time with yourself, but I mean, if you look at the practice of meditation is a practice of just sitting by yourself, whether it's closing your eyes or not closing your eyes, and just being present to what comes up. And look at the benefits people get from that. They're more calm, more peaceful. They're more present. They're more with you when they're there. So many people talk about how it's helped them get past some really difficult challenges in their life. They're more centered. Well, guess what? Those are all the same benefits we get when we spend time with ourselves. So spending time with ourselves will tremendously benefit us for those times when we don't spend time with ourselves. Will benefit us when we're spending time with other people, when we're going out and doing things. But spending time with ourselves is also important and essential for us to be able to know and to feel what is right for us. So often we get pushed into making a decision fast, quick, right away. One-time offer, you have to do this now or the offer goes away. There are all these marketing techniques to scare us into making a choice right away that doesn't necessarily serve us. We're pushed to answer a question as fast as possible. That doesn't serve us. Because sometimes in the moment we can get carried away by emotion and not make a very good decision or choice. So when we make time for ourselves, we can give ourselves some space and some distance while we're considering different choices, different decisions, and really weigh whether it feels right to us, whether it makes sense, whether it's going to bring us what we truly want. I mean, I'll be the first to admit there were lots of decisions in my life that I made way too hastily, that I did not spend time with myself. And I deeply regret some of those decisions. Because almost always when I don't take time to sit with it, to sleep on it, to give myself some space with it, it almost never works out the way I expected or the way that would ultimately serve me best. So spending time with ourselves and making time for ourselves helps us to make much, much better choices in our life. And we create our life through the choices that we make. So what can be more important than that? What can be a bigger benefit than that? Now, the challenge with it is there are so many demands on our time. There are so many people who want our attention. There's so much to see and do that we feel like we're missing out on something if we're not constantly engaged, constantly doing something, constantly appeasing the other person who wants our attention. But how can we really be present to them if we haven't spent some time with ourselves, checking in with ourselves, feeling ourselves, finding our center? How can we really truly be with another person? Now, look, I know there are always exceptions. I know there are people who are caregivers, who are taking care of elderly parents or young children or other relatives who have no one else to care for them. But sometimes taking time for ourselves can just be a little thing. It doesn't mean having to take a whole evening off and shirk our responsibilities. Sometimes it can just be taking 5 minutes out to just sit and be quiet before we enter into our next thing, before we engage in the next thing. To just give ourselves an opportunity to breathe, to just relax and just go, oh. We don't have to take care of the world, and we don't have to carry it on our backs. But sometimes it feels like we do. And if we can just give ourselves a moment to just breathe, to just notice our breath, to notice how we feel in our body, this wonderful machine, this mechanism that we've been given that serves us so well, at least for most of us through our life. When there's so much to do and so much to be done, so many people, yeah, it's challenging to take time for ourselves. Lots of little ways to do it. I'll tell you my secret. Please don't tell anybody this. I'm holding you all to like the strictest of confidentiality, okay? I want you all to promise me you're not going to share Sam's secret of how he makes time for himself sometimes when it's challenging. I tell people I have to go to the bathroom. And I'll go and close the door and I'll do my business if I have any business to do. And if not, I'll just sit there. I'll just sit and take a breath. And I'll just take my time. Hopefully nobody needs to use the bathroom at that time. And maybe I'll wash my hands, I'll look in the mirror, but I'll really take my time because that's the one place people often are very reticent to disturb us. So yeah, I'm holding you to my secret. Do not tell anyone. But yeah, just saying, hey, I need to go to the bathroom. I'll be back in a minute. And just take your time there. Don't rush it. Don't be looking to get out of it. Just sit there and take your time. It's my sanctuary. Used to be known as the library. I know most people refer to the bathroom as the library. but really it's a sanctuary. So that's just one little trick that I use. Feel free to use it yourselves. Don't tell anybody that that's what I do, okay? Just between you and me. And the reason why I'll do that, because I know how important it is to make time for ourselves. And there are a lot of little ways to do it. I mean, there are big ways also, but there's a lot of little ways to do it. And especially if somebody is pushing us for an answer, that's when we got to use the, I need to sleep on it. I'm not sure how I feel about it right now. I need a little time to sit with it. Don't answer them right away if it's a big choice, a big decision, or even if it's a small one, but you're just not sure. Give yourself some time and space. You don't always have to answer a question someone asks you. Lots of ways to avoid answering a question that was asked of you. And you can always say, that's a really good question. Let me think about it. Or, oh, that's really interesting. You know what? I really need to feel into this. I really need to think about this. I really need to consider everything. Or just the, oh my God, this is wonderful. I'd love to answer you, but I've just got so much going on right now. I don't even know what the answer would be. Give me some time and I'll find you an answer. Just put them off. Just put them off. There's nothing as important for us as making time for ourselves. Now look, is this absolute? Can you always do this? Of course not. Sometimes there are things that are pressing, that need a decision right away. Sometimes there are things that are extremely time sensitive. But sometimes people make it look like there are things that are time sensitive and they're not. And you know how you can tell? Well, if you've taken my advice and if you've been making time for yourself and you know how you feel in your body because you've spent time with yourself, then when something like that comes, you'll feel it. You'll know it right away. No one will have to tell you. It'll just be obvious to you. Oh, I actually do need to answer this right away. But when we're constantly living in response and reaction, and we're not giving ourselves a chance to breathe, then everything seems like an emergency. Everything is a crisis. Everything needs to get handled right away. And the truth is, actually, a relatively small percentage of them need to get handled right away. Now, look, I'm not a parent. I don't know what it's like to raise small children. And of course, you got to get them to school. You got to get them out of bed. You got to get them to do a whole bunch of things. So a lot of that stuff can feel like very time pressured. But maybe it's just about giving more time for the activity, giving more time for it so it doesn't feel so tight and so pressured. There's often many ways to approach something. Anyway, I hope this is resonating with you. I hope that you're getting something out of this discussion. We do have one last break we take before we finish the show. And so I do have some more little golden nuggets on the importance of making time for ourselves. And I've talked about little things. Let's talk about some big things that maybe appear obvious, but often aren't. So everyone, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. And we'll be right back with the last segment of my last show for 2024. We'll be right back.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
And welcome back. So we've been talking throughout the hour about the importance of making time for ourselves, and I've been kind of emphasizing the little things in life, taking those little short 5-minute pauses, taking your time when answering a question, taking your time, even when you get out of bed in the morning, when you're going to bed at night, when you're eating your meals. Like really, even just before you start to sit down and eat your food, why not be a little more present to it? Why not just give yourself a moment and smell it, smell how delicious it is, take in the colors and everything. Hopefully it's a good meal. But there are also some big ways we can make time for ourselves. And I'm going to speak for a moment to my entrepreneurs out there, because those who work at companies and corporations, you get your standard, whatever, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks vacation every year. But sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to keep working, because if we're not working, we're not making money. And that's a horrible thing. And I mean, I've done it, especially since the pandemic. We thought we were taking time off, but we were really house sitting and still working, but just working from other places. But today, my wife and I, we're leaving for a vacation. We're going away for 8-9 days. And it's something we don't always do a vacation. Sometimes it's a staycation, but we always close down our businesses for the last 2 weeks of the year. I mean, Christmas week, New Year's week, there's usually not a whole lot going on anyway. And so we take it off to give ourselves some time. And we've been doing it probably now for at least 7-8 years, maybe a little longer. But there were a number of years we didn't make sure to do that. We would keep working, during Christmas week and stuff. And I have to tell you, I'm so grateful that we started this practice. And, sometimes you might have businesses that can't close down. Maybe it's the busiest time of year for you, but maybe it's a couple of weeks in the summer. Maybe it's a couple of weeks after tax season. I don't know, whatever it is, your business cycles better than I do. But putting in the calendar a vacation, time off from work, and sticking to it is one of the most important things you can do to get ourselves out of our typical day-to-day stuff, just to get away, just to get a different environment, different scenery, so we can have time and space to relax, to keep our minds fresh with something new, to meet different people from all around the world, Vacations are so, so important. And there are different types of vacations. And sometimes there are vacations where you're going out, you're exploring, you're running around, seeing a new country in different places. And sometimes there are vacations where you're just sitting by the beach, swimming in the ocean, doing nothing. They both have a place, but they're both equally important. And you may say to me, Sam, I can't afford to take off time from work. There's just too much going on. Well, you know what? If we keep working and don't take the time off and we're drained and we're tired, our creativity goes down. Our ability to think clearly goes down. Our ability to come up with new ideas and better ways of doing things decreases. And we're actually less productive. We're actually less able to do things the right way. So when we take time off, we can come back and be refreshed, and we're actually more productive. And a great example of this is there's this wonderful book. I've mentioned it a couple of times on my show called The Diamond Cutter by Geshe Michael Roche. And in it, he talks about how he negotiated getting every Wednesday off when he started working at this company, where he would do no work. He wouldn't take his phone with him. He would go out and meditate, walk in the woods, do whatever, be in nature. So when he came back on Thursday, he was refreshed, super active, and he was able to be more productive than other people who worked in the office 5 days a week. See, this is the thing that doesn't really get talked about a lot. Is sometimes in order to be more productive, we need to be less productive. But sometimes in order to achieve things, we need to take ourselves out of the environment. We need to do something else for a period of time so that then we can come back to the work we're doing with being refreshed, being able to see things anew, being able to approach things from a new perspective and a new point of view. So this is why vacations are sacred. They should not be missed, skipped for anything except the most extreme circumstances. And even if you work for someone else and they're giving you a hard time about taking time off, you let them know, if you want me to be productive, if you want me to be my best, I need to take some time off so I can be refreshed, so that I can de-stress, so that I can be better, so that I can come back and solve the problems you want me to solve. And sometimes it's funny when we take the time off, when we've been working on something really hard and just nothing seems to be working, and we take time off and we just totally remove ourselves from the situation. I cannot tell you how many times the situation ended up resolving itself while I was away. So really, it comes down to one thing. Why is it so important to make time for ourselves? It's so we can be more present to our daily life. It's so that we can show up and be our best selves. But if we're constantly on the run, we're constantly engaged with other people, we're constantly distracted, we're constantly doing things for other people, and we never take a step back, how can we find a fresh perspective? How can we truly be our best? How can we see things in a different context, a different way? How can we solve the problems? How can we make good choices, good decisions? How can we really be there for the people who are truly relying on us? The only way to achieve that is to remove ourselves from our daily environment sometimes. And look, if you can schedule it so that you can take a week off every 2-3 months, do it. Or take 2 weeks off every 4 months, do it. And if you can just maybe put a little extra time in your calendar, in your schedule, give yourself some free time in the middle of the day or the afternoon. Don't go to meetings. Don't work on anything. Just give yourself that time. The benefits will astound you. And especially taking time away from our screens. We're so focused, this little thing in our hand. We miss a whole world of wonder happening around us. So, this is my final message for you for 2024. Please honor yourself. Take care of yourself. Take time for yourself. Value yourself enough to know that you're worth it. And that by taking time for yourself, you'll be able to come back, show up better for your family, your friends, your coworkers, your bosses, your employees. You'll show up better for the world around you. And who knows? Who knows? Maybe you'll set a good example for other people, and other people will start doing the same. What a world we would have if everyone just took a little more time to be with themselves and not distracted, so that we could all be a little more present to what's going on. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you, my loyal listeners, for staying with me throughout the year. I so appreciate you. It's my last new show for the year. So after this, we'll be joining you in the first week of January. I forget what date it is. It's like the 7th or the 8th or the 9th. And look for some new stuff happening next year and some changes to the network. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate every single one of you. Let me know how you liked or didn't like this episode. I may not be able to comment back right away because I got to run and catch a plane. But you comment on the YouTube video, the Facebook video, and I'll see it and I'll respond. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you all. We will not talk to you next week. We will talk to you all next year. Take care.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC.